I'm Susan Euler. In this program, we're going to learn the basics of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. And then we're going to take a look at the Narmer Palette, the oldest known example of a written historical narrative. Nearly everyone is familiar with the ancient Egyptian form of writing known as hieroglyphics. To modernize, used to our own alphabet, it seems very strange, certainly difficult, if not impossible to read. Well, the truth is, hieroglyphics are difficult to read. But then again, all writing systems are difficult to read until you master the conventions. But that aside, most Egyptians couldn't read hieroglyphics or anything else. The idea that all people should be able to read and write is a modern concept. The ancient Egyptians began developing writing around 3100 BC at the beginning of the Bronze Age. It was regarded as an amazing technology, so much so that they called writing words of the gods. Later, the Greeks dubbed Egyptian writing sacred letters or sacred carvings, which is what the word hieroglyphics literally means. Since only a few people in ancient Egypt could read and write, the job of scribe, what we might call a secretary, had extremely high status. Very often, scribes were sons of the pharaoh himself, or at least members of the high-ranking nobility. And when he died, a scribe made sure he could go on doing his job for all eternity. Now, how did he do this? Well, the ancient Egyptians thought that artwork had magic properties. By placing a statue of himself inside his tomb getting ready to take dictation, along with writing tools, ink, and sometimes a painting or two showing him holding those tools, he was assured of continuing his job in the afterlife. To understand how Egyptian writing developed and why it was considered so important, we have to go back to the beginning of the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age, which follows the Neolithic or New Stone Age, is characterized by widespread use of the metal bronze, an alloy of copper and tin. Bronze is a very hard metal, and its invention gave societies that knew how to produce it a distinct advantage over their Stone Age neighbors, especially when it came to weaponry. One of the civilizations that benefited most from the use of bronze was that of ancient Egypt. Egypt, like the other great Bronze Age civilizations in China and Mesopotamia, used bronze technology to conquer new territories, exploit natural resources, and grow immensely rich and powerful. And along with that wealth and power, they developed an obsession with leaving their mark on the world in a form that could never be erased. First, they put up huge stone monuments that were meant to be permanent and last forever. And second, they developed writing. Writing, of course, allowed Bronze Age people to record their ideas, their battles, even mundane events from their daily lives, in a form that could be read and understood down through the ages, thus assuring them of immortality. Once hieroglyphics were fully developed, they contained everything necessary for a written language: verbs, nouns, parts of speech. However, when they began, they were simply pictographs. What are pictographs? Simply put, pictographs, or pictograms as they are also called, are images that symbolize the thing represented. For example, as a pictograph, the drawing of the eye shown here would mean the word eye. Here are some modern pictographs that you will immediately recognize. Judging from all the recognizable images of birds, snakes, and other animals, you might think that Egyptian hieroglyphics are pictographs, and some are. For example, this hieroglyph means the crown of Upper Egypt. It's simply a line drawing of what that crown looks like. But it's more complicated than that. Although at the beginning of the Bronze Age, the first hieroglyphics were simple pictographs, as a system of writing, the use of only pictographs left a lot to be desired, because all pictographs are nouns. Try to make sense out of this sentence written solely in pictographs. It makes no sense, does it? There are no verbs, no parts of speech. Realizing the same drawbacks, the ancient Egyptians soon modified the images, giving them more than one meaning. For example, this hieroglyph of an eye can mean eye, but it can also serve as a determinative for words related to vision. Later, the same I hieroglyph came to also mean to do or to make. Uh-oh, this is complicated. But before you panic, let's look at another modern pictographic sentence that I know you can read. I love cats. You can read it because you know the agreed upon conventions. I in this sentence means the first person pronoun I, because the two words I and I sound alike, and the context tells us which one is meant. The heart image is a symbol. We know it's a heart, although it doesn't really look like a real human heart. And we also know that it symbolizes the abstract concept love, which in this context is being used as a verb. I love cats. The drawing of the three cats is a true pictograph. It represents exactly what is depicted, several cats. So, I love cats. This is basically how ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics work. At least at first. This mace head from the proto-dynastic period dates from around 3250 BC to 3100 BC. It has only two hieroglyphs. One is a golden rosette or flower that scholars think means lord or even king in this context. The other is a scorpion. This may be the king's heraldic animal, much as a lion is on the English coat of arms. In later times, a hieroglyph of a scorpion represented poison or illness or ill wind. But since this mace head is so early, that meaning may not apply here. Scholars simply refer to him as King Scorpion or the Scorpion King. Note how he's wearing the crown of Upper Egypt. And now we come to the Narmer Palette. So what is the Narmer Palette? Well, simply put, it's what's called a large cosmetic palette that was used for ceremonial purposes, and it was found in a temple cache of sacred objects. We all know how the ancient Egyptians wore a lot of eye makeup. This was probably their way of cutting down on the glare from the harsh Egyptian sun, much like modern football players sometimes put dark streaks under their eyes. Small palettes used for mixing eye paint were a part of every Egyptian's cosmetic case. The Narmer palette is a much larger, more elaborate version of an ordinary cosmetic palette, probably used by priests in some long-forgotten ceremony where they mixed eye paint. The main figure is a king named Narmer. He's shown larger than the others because in ancient Egypt, the most important person in a scene was always shown larger than his or her less prestigious comrades. We call this hierarchical scale. How do we know this is King Narmer? Well, just like on the King Scorpion mace head, his name is written several times on the palette in hieroglyphics. But look how writing has advanced in the few decades that separate the two artworks. Narmer's name is written out in pictographs of a catfish and a chisel, surrounded by a palace facade. Narmer. It means a striking catfish. Scholars are not sure if his name was actually striking catfish, or if the two pictographs are used phonetically because they sound like his name, Narmer, or maybe it's both. In any event, the name catfish applied to a king may seem silly until you take a look at the dangerous giant catfish that swim the Nile River. Gives you a new respect for the awesome power of a king called striking catfish, doesn't it? Narmer is the king who most scholars believe unified Upper and Lower Egypt into one country. This important event is what is being shown illustrated on the Narmer palette. On the other side of the palette, we see the importance of writing being illustrated. Here, Narmer is going out to the battlefield to inspect the decapitated bodies of the men killed in his war to unify the two lands. The man directly in front of the king is a scribe. The hieroglyph above him is an early version of the word scribe. And notice how clearly the artist has shown that this man is carrying his writing tools, his bags of ink, his pens. A very important person. The scribe is accompanying the king in order to record the events for posterity. The power of writing, the words of the gods. For the 10-Minute Professor, this is Susan Ray Euler. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure you watch our next program.